I'm Sarah, I'm 4 to 6 years old, and today I want to share how my ex-mother-in-law weaponized her church community to harass my teenage daughters at a public market, calling them unchristian for not embracing their dead father's affair children. The irony? She had no idea I possessed every piece of evidence of her precious son's 2-year affair, including her own messages calling my daughters bastards just days after their father's funeral. Sometimes the truth has a funny way of finding its way to exactly the right people at exactly the right time. If you're watching this video, let me know where you're viewing from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button and stay tuned to see how I turned my ex-in-law's campaign of harassment into their complete downfall within their own church community. Until last year, I thought I had a pretty solid handle on my life. I was married to David, had 2 incredible daughters, Emma, now 17, and Lily, 15, and I was the primary breadwinner keeping our family afloat. David worked sporadically, but I didn't mind. I believed in our partnership, our family, our future together. Then came the phone call that shattered everything. David had been in a car accident. Fatal. Instantaneous. The kind of call that splits your life into a brutal before and after. But here's where the story takes a twist that would make a soap opera writer jealous. While I was drowning in grief, planning a funeral, and trying to hold my daughters together, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. My daughters, my brave, incredible daughters, came to me 3 days after their father's funeral with information that would have destroyed me if I wasn't already broken. They'd found text messages, photos, evidence of an affair that had been going on for over 2 years. An affair that had produced 2 young boys, now orphaned because their mother had also died recently. The betrayal cut deeper than the grief. David hadn't just cheated on me, he'd created an entire second family while I was working 60-hour weeks to support the family I thought we were building together. The man I'd loved, trusted, shared a bed with for nearly 2 decades, had been living a double life so elaborate it would have impressed a spy. But the real nightmare? His parents knew. They'd known about the affair, supported it, even helped David hide it from me. While I was buying Christmas presents for them, cooking Sunday dinners, being the dutiful daughter-in-law, they were complicit in the destruction of their own son's marriage. Now, you'd think that would be rock bottom, right? Wrong. Because David's parents, Harold and Margaret, both in their late 70s and pillars of their conservative church community, decided that his death meant I owed them something. They wanted custody of my daughters. Not just visitation. Full custody. And when that legal battle began, they also demanded to move into my house. Let me be clear about something, I was the breadwinner. I owned our home. I'd been supporting their son financially for years. But somehow, in their twisted logic, I was supposed to hand over my children and open my doors to the people who'd helped orchestrate the betrayal that nearly destroyed me. My daughters, understandably, wanted nothing to do with their paternal grandparents or their half-brothers. This wasn't about being cruel. They were traumatized. They'd discovered their father's betrayal, lost him to death, and now were being pressured to embrace the living proof of his infidelity. They were in therapy, working through layers of grief and betrayal that no teenager should have to navigate. But Harold and Margaret saw it differently. To them, my daughters were being unchristian and selfish. They launched a campaign of emotional manipulation that would have made a cult leader proud, constantly messaging the girls about their poor orphaned baby brothers and their Christian duty to embrace them. Then came Lily's birthday weekend. I decided to make it special, took her to our local farmer's market with a budget and told her to go wild. She loves chocolate, fresh pastries, artisanal candies. For an hour, I watched her bounce from stall to stall like the 15-year-old she deserved to be, momentarily free from the adult trauma that had invaded her world. Then my phone rang. Mom. Lily's voice was shaking, thick with tears. Some weird people have cornered me. I don't know what to do. I ran through that market like my hair was on fire, Emma right behind me. What we found made my vision literally blur with rage. 6 older women, church ladies I recognized from Harold and Margaret's congregation, had surrounded my 15-year-old daughter. They were berating her, actually lecturing her about being unchristian for not wanting to spend time with her paternal grandparents, calling her a bad big sister for not embracing her poor orphaned baby brothers. Picture this scene: a circle of women old enough to be great-grandmothers, verbally attacking a grieving teenage girl in the middle of a public market because she wouldn't perform the emotional labor they deemed appropriate. This wasn't concern. This was harassment, pure and simple. I wedged myself between these vultures and my daughter, my protective instincts kicking into overdrive. "Emma, take your sister's stuff to the car. Now." My voice had that deadly calm that every mother recognizes, the voice that comes right before the storm. These women had the audacity to tell me I was even worse than my daughter for refusing to obey my former in-laws like a good Christian wife. Let me repeat that. They wanted me to obey the parents of my dead, cheating husband like a good Christian wife. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. What followed was a public scene that ended with all of us being asked to leave the market. These women actually followed us to our car like a pack of judgmental wolves, probably thinking they'd accomplished something righteous. That night, after tucking my traumatized daughters into bed and spending an hour reassuring them that none of this was their fault, I reached out to someone I trusted from that church, a reasonable man named Tom who'd always seemed different from the others. What he told me made everything click into place. Margaret had posted what Tom described as a massive sob story in the church's private Facebook group. She'd painted herself and Harold as destitute, homeless victims, claiming my daughters and I had abandoned them in their time of need. She'd portrayed my girls as heartless for not embracing their half-brothers, and, here's the kicker, she'd somehow managed to explain away the existence of these children without mentioning David's affair. How? She told the church community that the other woman was our surrogate because I was unable to have more children, and that I'd rejected the boys simply because they weren't girls. She'd turned me into a monster who'd used a surrogate then abandoned the children, and painted David as the innocent victim of my selfishness. Now, this church community has some interesting perspectives on many social issues. But they have one saving grace: they take adultery very seriously. Cheating, from either spouse, is considered one of the worst sins possible. Margaret had managed to spin her story without exposing David's affair because she knew it would destroy their reputation in their precious church community. Sitting at my kitchen table at midnight, scrolling through Tom's screenshots of Margaret's posts, watching dozens of church members express outrage at my supposed cruelty, something crystallized in my mind. The injustice of it all, the harassment of my daughters, the lies about our family, the way these people felt entitled to judge us based on fabricated information, it demanded correction. I was fortunate in one crucial way: David and I had been in the middle of divorce proceedings when he died. I had everything. Every text message between David and his affair partner. Every explicit photo they'd sent each other. Every communication between David and his parents about the affair, including messages where Harold and Margaret had actually encouraged him to leave me for his true love. Every cruel text they'd sent my daughters after David's death, including one sent just 2 days after the funeral calling my girls bastards and blaming them for their father's death because they'd exposed his affair. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to a high-end print shop. I wanted everything perfect, professional quality, impossible to dismiss as fake or doctored. Color photos, clear text messages, undeniable evidence of a 2-year affair and the family's complicity in it. But I didn't just want to dump evidence. I wanted to make a statement. I designed custom binders that looked exactly like the small prayer and hymn booklets the church provided for services. Same cream-colored cardstock, same elegant font, same ribbon bookmarks. To anyone glancing at them, they looked like official church materials. The cover read simply, "A Love Story" in beautiful calligraphy. The first page, when opened, featured a high-resolution photo of David and his affair partner making out in our living room, faces clearly visible. The woman obviously not me given our different skin tones and hair color. Underneath, I'd written in the same elegant font, "David's and Jessica's love story." I'd organized the evidence chronologically, like chapters in a book. The affair's beginning. David's parents learning about it and encouraging him. The birth of the first child. Margaret helping David hide expenses. Harold driving David to his affair partner's house when his car was in the shop. screenshots of family group chats where they'd discussed how to handle me if I found out. And finally, their messages to my daughters after David's death, calling them bastards, blaming them for their father's death, pressuring them to embrace the affair children. Sunday morning, I arrived at the church 30 minutes before service began. The back of the sanctuary had a table with extra hymnals and prayer books for people who'd forgotten their own or needed one. I simply placed my beautiful, professional-looking binders among the other materials and left. I didn't stick around to watch the explosion. I didn't need to. The gossip mill in a church community moves faster than wildfire in drought season. By Sunday afternoon, Tom was texting me updates that were almost too delicious to believe. The Facebook group had exploded with comments so harsh that the pastor had to step in to moderate. People were calling David names I can't repeat on this platform. His affair partner was being referred to in biblical terms, Jezebel being the mildest of them. But here's what made me laugh until I cried. Even with undeniable proof of David's affair, some members still found a way to partially blame me. According to their posts, I was understandable but wrong for seeking divorce. I had failed in my wifely duties during my shock, but I might one day return to the light, unlike my cheating husband and his Jezebel. The response to Margaret and Harold's treatment of my daughters, however, was swift and unanimous. Church members were outraged by the evidence of their cruelty. Messages calling teenage girls bastards just days after their father's funeral didn't sit well with people who'd bought into Margaret's victim narrative. 2 days later, I received handwritten apology letters addressed to both my daughters and an invitation to join their church community for support during this difficult time. The irony was not lost on me. But the real satisfaction came from Margaret herself. Unable to face the community that now knew the truth about her precious son and her own cruel behavior, she posted on her personal Facebook wall about feeling alienated and abandoned by those who should care for the elderly. She lamented that her great son would have taken care of her and Harold if he was still alive. With what money, I wondered. I'd been the breadwinner for years. Within a month, Harold and Margaret had quietly left the church they'd attended for over 3 decades. Their custody lawsuit suddenly lost momentum when their own legal counsel advised them that the evidence of their harassment of my daughters wouldn't play well in family court. The harassment stopped. The guilt trips ended. My daughters could go to the farmer's market without fear of being cornered by judgmental strangers who knew nothing about our real story. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge, it's about truth. Margaret had weaponized her church community against my children by feeding them lies. All I did was provide the truth, professionally presented and impossible to dismiss. The community's response wasn't my doing, it was theirs, based on their own values and standards. My daughters are doing better now. Therapy is helping, and they are no longer being pressured to perform forgiveness they don't feel for people who showed them no kindness during the worst period of their lives. They are allowed to grieve their father while also being angry about his betrayal. They are allowed to have complicated feelings about half-brothers they never asked for. And me? I sleep better at night knowing that the next time someone tries to use a community's faith as a weapon against my family, that community will have all the facts they need to make their own informed decisions. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself, especially when it's dressed in beautiful presentation materials and placed exactly where it needs to be seen. If you've ever had to fight for your family's truth against people who thought they could control the narrative, drop a comment below. What's the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever witnessed? And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of people who refuse to be silently victimized, and share this with anyone who needs to remember that the truth has a way of surfacing, even when people try their hardest to bury it. Until next time, remember, the truth doesn't need your permission to set things right.